टेस्टिंग. ओके. क्या नॉइस है? दूसरा में लगाऊं? हेलो हेलो. माइक टेस्टिंग. हेलो भाई. लबीब. हेलो हेलो. लिस्ट किधर है? इधर आओ. व्हाट लिस्ट? दैट शेड्यूल. शेड्यूल. And match the PPTs who have given or not. Okay, okay. Then I. So now the session will be starting from technical session 1. She'll be reading about RVJ hasn't given his bio, so she'll just say Dean School of Economics, and then she'll say about Satyasai. So his TPP should be, and that's it. That's it. And all this is these are the speakers. Pen, you have pen. Yeah. Yeah. To you. Through email? They would have sent to the university seminar email ID. But how you're gonna share that? Yeah. I can share with you and download it to the pen drive. Okay, then you is it in WhatsApp? That's what. Is it in emails? In then Net is connected. Yeah, but careful. It's on the screen. Where is it? Yeah, wait. Everything will be in conference today state. What's the name? Avani, right? I'm sharing. Here only, right? So then all the speakers are here. Everyone is here. Everyone's presenters. No, like only some people are there. Should I? Gansham is here. Then Priya. Give me the pen. Yeah, I have. Where is? I put it here. Yeah. In the afternoon, Priya, then Avani. Only three people have forwarded their PPTs to this discrimination conference link. No one has got. The rest would be coming with their PPTs in their pen drive. In the pen, yeah. You have to ask them to copy there. Okay, I'll ask them. It's okay. When they will come, I'll ask them. Or it's okay. Tell me.
Hello, hello, hello.
to all. Welcome back to the two-day conference on intersectionality and economics of discrimination, second day. So we'll start with the technical session today on. He came? Oh, okay. No title. వాళ్ళు అక్కడ చెప్తున్నారని అంటే డిస్కసెంట్ కేమ్. So good morning to all, and welcome back to the second day conference. And now we'll be starting with the first technical session on intersectional inequality and poverty. I request Professor R. Vijay to chair the technical session and Dr. Satya Sai to be the discussant for the technical session. I request Chandrima to give the formal introduction of the chair as well as the discussant.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Conference Organizing Committee and the School of Economics, University of Hyderabad, I am delighted to welcome you all to the second day of our conference. We are thrilled to begin with the first technical session titled Intersectional Inequality and Poverty. This session is chaired by Professor R. Vijay, Professor at School of Economics, University of Hyderabad, and the discussant of the session is Dr. Satyasai J.S. Kovali, former Chief General Manager, NABARD, Hyderabad. Dr. Satyasai has 36 years of experience in applied empirical economic research in various areas such as development banking, rural credit, financial inclusion, and agricultural. He holds a PhD in agri-economics and has published around 120 monographs, research papers, and articles. He served NABARD for 30 years before returning as head of the Department of Economic Analysis and Research, leading numerous projects and surveys. He also has over 4 years of teaching experience and has been involved in several professional associations and advisory roles and special assignments. He has also interest in music, art, and literature. We welcome you, sir. Now, over to the chair.
Thank you, Chandrima. Firstly, I thank the organizers for giving me a chance to be the chairperson of this session, which is intersectional inequality and poverty. I'll not take much time. I'll be like a policeman only, trying to only define the timing, right? If I have some particular ideas or points, I'll raise it later. So what we do is, I thought we'll give around 8 minutes to each presenter, right? And extendable by 1 minute, which is not, let's hope we don't extend it. So 8 minutes presentations, and maybe then we have around 20 minutes for discussions, right? So there is a schedule which has been given, and because markets does always reallocations, everything has got reallocated. So I have another set of the sequencing is different. So we follow the sequencing that has given. I just want to verify if everyone is there. First person to go is Amit. I think he's coming online. Second is Ghanshyam Pandey. I think he's there. Third is Polani Bhatt is there. Fourth is Nitin is there. Fifth is Prashant is there. No, as yet. Sixth will be Jagdish. Is Jagdish there anywhere here? Jagdish also is. Then seventh speaker is Srinivasu is there here. Eighth is Krishna Rao. Also. Ninth speaker is Kannan, he is here. 10th would be Srijit Mishra, he is present. 11th is Prashant Kulkarni. So let's hope others do come in. So the first person is Amit, I think he's going online. So can one start with it? 10 minutes? 8 minutes is the timeline that we are putting it up. Right? Someone to... Amit, are you there?
Dr. Amit? Who is in chat? Sound is there. How do I? That Madhu is there. It'll take some time. Let's start with the second speaker, Ghanshyam Pandey. Could you come over before we get this thing worked up? 8 minutes. Do you have anything? Because I don't want to sit there. No.
This is a PPT. Okay, to thanks to Professor Sridevi for the opportunity to speak on my topic here. I'm privileged, to be present here. I can see the so many faces, right? I started my journey by reading there, the literature. Yesterday, Professor Deshpande sir was there, and the Professor Thorat. So let's, I know the beginning 40 minutes, but I came to know about I have to finish 5 to 10 minutes now. So I don't know how to do, but I will try, right? Thank you so much, sir. So basically, my topic is exploring the social and economic determinants of income inequality in the rural area and rural India. And if you see the the inequality is a very the important in these days, even in the this developed countries, the inequality is increasing over the period of time, and that is a big challenge for the Kuznets use inverted U-shape curve, right? So I'm skipping the the introduction part here, and just coming to the directly to my findings. So recently, one of the this study has done by the the NCER, and they have already calculate the Gini coefficient for the states, right? So here you see that the Gini coefficient basically increase for the state of the like the Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, the Meghalaya. These states are also known for the the deprived, right? So Gini coefficient is increasing in those states. It means that the inequality is again increasing over the period of time. Coming to the my study, so this study is basically based on the the secondary data as well as the IHDS data for the 2012 and 11 and 12. Uh, Coming to the my methodology, so I have applied two methodology. First one is the field decomposition of the inequality, and to see the how the variables included in our model, how they are contributing toward the inequality. And the second is the clad model, that is basically determinants of the income inequality in the rural area. So just skipping to these questions and all these things, and kind of coming to the findings. So this is basically you were talking about the over the period of time of the category was the number of the land holding in India in the millions. So you can see here the marginal farmers the increase by almost the 3 times from the 1970 to 2015 and 16. At the same time, the large farmers has declined subsequently from 2.7 million to only 0.83 millions. Coming to the category-wise proportional operated area, also we can see here from the 1970 to 2015, it is increasing for the the small category farmers. However, it is going down for the the large and the medium farmers. And this is the average size of the holding for the the from the 1970s. So it was 2.28 the hectare in the beginning. The first census of agriculture in 1970-71. However, it just reached to just over the one the hectare right now. Coming to the average size of the holding of the category wise, so here this table completely show that the average size of the holding category wise is almost the same for the the small and the marginal farmer. The little bit of decline, but the sharp decline we can see here for the the large and the medium size. That the so many farmers they are living due to the increase in the population and all this, and that is the biggest reason for the declining the the farm size categories. Coming to this is the percentage change in the number and the area of the land holding across the different states in India between 2010 and 11 to 2015 and 16. So here, two things we have. So one is the area of the holdings, another is the number of the holdings. So state-wise, the categorization has a given. Due to the shortage of the time, I'm not going to discuss this in the detail here. I will come to the the results from the secondary data. And this is the Guinea index for the land ownership from the 1995 to 2015 in 56. Now here we see here. In the state of the Andhra Pradesh, and basically a decline by the 16% over the period of time, and highest decline in the the Gini coefficient for the land ownership was in the Bihar, and the followed by the Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, the West Bengal, and the Andhra Pradesh. Apart from the Andhra Pradesh, all these states are known for the the low productivity in the agriculture, and low development of the agriculture sector, and that is the reason and how it is a decline the very fast in these states. Coming to the the categorization of the the income sources for the my studies, so I have categorized the five categories. The regime wise. So regime one, basically, that is the income from the agriculture and agricultural labor, and the regime two, basically from income from the casual and wage laborers. Regime three, basically from the income from business, and the income from the salary categorized in the regime 4, and the regime from income from the other sources like the remittances and the other government the transfer. So this is the per capita income by the regime for the 2011 and 12. It is completely so that the per capita income is lower in the rural areas compared to the urban area, but the pattern is same here. So we can see here the regime 1, the per capita income from the regime 1 is lower as compared to the one, and regime 5. The regime 4, the per capita income is the highest among the all the the rural as well as the urban area. Coming to the per capita Gini coefficient, also you see here the highest the Gini coefficient we can see in the regime, I think 5, right, as compared to the others in the all the the rural, urban as well as the overall. This is the decomposition of the income inequality by the regime in in rural India for 2012, 11 and 12 from the IHDS data, and we can see here the first one is the income share, right? It simply means that then the regime 1, around 46% of the income is coming from the regime 1, followed by the the regime 4, and then regime 2, and the subsequently by the regime 5. Correlation is also high for the the regime. Correlation with the rank of the total income and the share of the the Guinea sources is also high for the regime 1 as compared to the other regime. Here the last the column, you can see the marginal contribution to the Guinea. It means that these the say the sources basically contributes toward the the Guinea, and contributing toward the inequality. So only if it falls under the regime 2 and the regime regime 5, the inequality is going down as compared to the other sectors. Coming to the, this is the field decomposition, a regression based regime specific contribution to the inequality in India. Here we see the basically the family size, right, and the land holding size is the these are the variables that contributes toward the income inequality in India. As far as the regime 1 is concerned, the family size, right, marginal, small, and the medium farmers, they are contributing toward the the inequality. However, we have also considered the zone wise, like the south zone, eastern zone, western zone. So one thing is a very important here. The last one you can see here, the contribution by the south zone is the 17.87. It means almost 18% toward the inequality, and that is only the reason behind that. It may be the productivity in the southern state is much better than the the northern and the eastern states. The similarly for the regime 2, these are the the factor. But if you look at the regime 4, the highest contribution by the higher education, and that is the income from the salary, and others. Obviously we can understand the salary from the income is a higher for the the any household income. Coming to the my last slide, I think this is the determinants of the income inequality in India. So last column is the overall income inequality, and almost all the variable they are contributing toward the income inequality. But yeah, here you can see in the regime 1 where the income from the agriculture and the agricultural labor, the female household head is negatively related with the income inequality. If they fall, the female is head from the family, the income is going down subsequently. And we know that the Indian female male dominated society, also they don't have they are not literate as much as the male, the fathers are there. Age of the house is square. This linear relationship. The linear relationship basically showing that with age, right, contribution of the income is going down. It's increasing, but it's increasing at the decreasing rate. So the age square is also age is positively related, but age square is a negatively related. That is the relationship between the income inequality. Similarly, scheduled tribals, right? That is, the basically if they fall under the scheduled tribal, it is negatively affect the income inequality in the area. And the last slides I'm going to discuss about the family size is also, negatively related with the income inequality in India. And this marginal farmer, small farmers, means we can categorize under the land holding size. This is, directly related with the income inequality in India. So, time is over, and she has already, the given, so on the. Thank you so much. I'm just stopping here due to the time constraint. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Professor Dr. Amit has come. So can one have him in the online presentation?
Hello, sir, you are not audible.
Yeah. Can you hear us now? Hello. Hello.
Hello, you are not audible, sir.
Uh,
So could you please remove the earphones? Now speak.
now we can't hear you.
Unplug the earphones from the laptop.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear us? We can't hear you. Until we solve this problem, let's have the next. She's speaking on intersecting identities and multidimensional poverty, a study of Koya tribes in the state of Telangana.
Yeah, this one. I can just. Yeah, fine. Good morning, everyone. Today I am going to make a presentation on intersecting identities and multidimensional poverty, a study of the Koya tribe in the state of Telangana. I would first, this is basically part of one of the project which I had done, sponsored by DST,
Seat Division DST and Telangana State Council of Science and Technology. We have completed the project just a month back. So this is just a very small exercise which I would like to share, and it's a paper, but at the same time this is just the preliminary exercise. So first of all, to begin with, we know that in India, the incidence of multidimensional poverty has declined from 29.17% in 2013-14 to 11.28% in 2020-23. This is a mistake. So therefore, in fact, at the same time, this decline in multidimensional poverty has been attributed to targeted policies towards eradicating this multidimensional poverty. In fact, multidimensional poverty, as we all know, differ across the states. Over time, there's been a lot of studies which, talk about multidimensional poverty and gender. Then also some of the studies talk about the multidimensional poverty with age. But therefore, we know that, I'm just not elaborating the review here, we know that intersectionality dimension to understand multidimensional poverty is also gaining currency, especially after 2021, where global MPI report has highlighted the importance of considering multidimensional poverty across ethnicity, caste, and gender. In general, intersectionality refers to the interconnection of social categories such as race, gender, class, sexuality, which shapes an individual's experience and opportunities. Now, given this fact, we have seen the fact that multidimensionality is gaining, across different, multidimensionality from an intersectional perspective is gaining currency. We have tried to address the specific intersection between tribe and land ownership status, right? So therefore, as I said, studies on multidimensional poverty mostly focus on gender, caste, age, and there is less focus on the other dimensions. Hence, we have taken up. I just have taken up the caste, the specific, ST community, and how their multidimensional poverty is differing across land ownership status. So now we have focused on Koya tribe in the state of Telangana, which is one of the largest tribes in the state, with 3.81 lakhs of population. So as per the 2018-19 annual report of Tribal Welfare Department, Government of Telangana. We have collected primary data from 2,118 Koya households from 4 different districts, namely Bhadraji, Kothaguram, Jaishankar, Bhupalapalli, Khammam, and Mahabubabad. So there was household questionnaire, which was converted to an app for capturing the quantitative household level and member-wise data. So now we have followed the AF Foster method to calculate MPI for Koya tribe in the state of Telangana. Now the indicators and the dimensions used for this method to calculate this MPI, it aligns with the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index 2024. We could have taken our national MPI indicators also, but we had some limitations of data. So therefore, we thought initially we'll start the analysis with the indicators or deprivation cutoffs aligned with Global MPI 2024. In fact, as I said, that we had some limitation of data, and anthropometric data was not available for especially to capture the first indicator of health dimension. So far in this exercise, we have taken 9 indicators across 3 dimensions, and as you see in this particular table, we have said that there are 3 dimension: health, education, and standard of living, and these are the indicators we have taken similar to the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index 2024, but at the same time, the health dimension, we have taken only 1 indicator, I would like to extend this study also to check whether I can take some proxy for the anthropometric data. So far I have not done it. So this is how we have taken the deprivation cutoffs and the weights. Now, as we all know, we have calculated the incidence, intensity, and final multidimensional poverty index using the standard formula. We also have calculated the contribution of each dimension to the multidimensional poverty index. Further, we also have estimated the censored and uncensored head count ratio. Okay, for each of the 9 indicators. Censored means the head count ratio of indicator, let's say J, head count ratio of indicator J, it refers to the proportion of people who are multidimensionally poor and also are deprived of that indicator. And the other one, without how many people are deprived in a particular indicator, irrespective of the fact that they are multidimensionally poor or not, is the uncensored one. The quick estimates of this, as we can see in this table, we can see that the now, as I said, that we have taken the overall, we have calculated the overall incidence, intensity, and MPI for the Koya tribes, and also, but at the same time, a disaggregated MPI for the landless and the landowners. I have not directly right now because it was very recently I've got a consent to use the data. So, but at the same time, I've not directly got into the debates or the detailed analysis across the agrarian classes, but I would like to do that for taking this research forward. So right now I have done it for landless and landowning households. Of course, we know that we have used the standard methods of calculation. So therefore, you can see here, this is we can see it here, naturally as expected, the landless, they have 10.8% of them are found to be multidimensionally poor, vis-a-vis 7.4% of the landowners. Overall MPI is 8.4% for the Koya tribe, which is much higher, much higher than the state MPI. So, of course, as I have limited time, you can see that the MPI is also much higher for the landless. Now, the contributions, I just since I have very limited time, I would say that one or two points I would like to highlight. You can see here, these are the contribution of each of these dimensions, and one can see that education for the landless, households, the education contributes a considerable percentage of MPI. So therefore, this has to be, as compared to landowners, education is one of the major contributing factors to MPI. So hence we say that greater emphasis on the improvement of education among landless households in the Koya community is required. Now this is the, as I said, we have gone for uncensored and censored. First we go for uncensored. You must be seeing that this is the overall head count, and we can say asset and housing, it has almost 90%, and 60% of the total Koya population, they are deprived in terms of this indicator. But look at this 90%. You may okay, just once, half a minute, sir. Yeah. So look at this 90%. But I would say, even in my fine paper, the indicator which we take for assets is basically they don't own more than one of any of this. But at the same time, I would like to point out that 52% of them, of these households, they own mobile phones, something like 47% own bikes. So they have one of that at least. So therefore, I think we need to further do one count it, change little bit the deprivation indicator and see that whether it is still high or not. Maybe that we may do later. So therefore, Therefore, and in the censored, head count ratio also, we can see similar patterns. So, what are the conclusions? As we see that you can also see here that here sanitation is also one indicator where the landless people head count is much higher the landowners. So this is one area where the policymakers need to concentrate, and housing also is another important aspect which requires policy attention, especially for the landless. And I think my time is over, so thank you very much for your
Dr. Amit back. So let us see if we can connect. Hello. We can't hear you. I think problem is same from our side.
I thought my audio will work, but still there is some problem, I guess.
Yeah. So,
Now you are able to hear me?
yeah, now we are able to hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay, okay.
Dr. Amit, thanks for
Yeah.
coming. It is 10:08.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'm sorry for the delay. There were some technical issues from my side.
Yeah,
So now shall I start my presentation?
Yeah, from technical from our side, you have 8 minutes for making the presentation.
Yeah, I got that, sir. So, good morning, one and all present there. So, as you can see, my topic for today's presentation is income inequality among agricultural households across major states in India. So, there is this persistent theme among researchers and academic that is on inequality in income and wealth distribution, particularly in a developing country like India. And it's not that there are any dearth of studies on this topic. There are many studies in fact, on income and wealth inequality. When we started our literature review for this project, we found that we could divide the entire set of literatures into three groups. One that is based on state inequality report database. Another set of studies took data from All India Data and Investment Studies, and the last one or the third set of studies used NSSO Consumption Expenditure Survey, and we found different findings from this set of studies. I'll just quickly summarize the findings. When we look at state inequality report data, studies said that the top 1% in India uh, owned around 6.82% of total income, and that figure for top 10% was around 32.52%, and the bottom 50% more importantly had a share of only 22%. Therefore, given the growth trajectories that we have experienced in the recent past, studies concluded that the growth benefits are concentrated among wealthy, and that marginalizes the poor. When we come to All India Debt and Investment Survey, the wealth concentration was increasing in the top 1% and 10%. So we found inequality to be rising when we look at set of studies based on state inequality report and All India Debt and Investment Surveys. However, when a group of studies were reviewed, which used an NSSO consumption expenditure survey, we found that based on the consumption expenditure data, there is a decrease in inequality, and the adjusted Gini ratio was reported to be 0.294. That is a famous study that was published in 2022. And as you know, 0.29 or roughly 0.3 Gini ratio is quite low. That kind of suggested that there is decrease increasing levels of inequality. So there is these stark differences in the findings when findings of these group of studies. Now, uh, uh, based on these literature reviews, we found there is a gap in the literature that most of these studies are done on all households regardless of their occupational profiles. However, we know that in India there is significant earning profile differences among households, and we hypothesize that overall income inequality is expected to be high compared to specific occupational groups, and therefore, after the publication of 77th round and analysis round data, we uh, we took that chance to base our study on agricultural households in India by taking 2012-13 round and 2018-19 round, and that is our study is focused on only one specific occupational group, that is agricultural households, right? Therefore, our objectives our objectives are, so we wanted to examine sources and levels of income inequality, sources and levels of income first of all of agricultural households. Then we wanted to examine levels and sources of income inequality among agricultural households, who, by the way, constitute the largest proportion of workforce. And for that, we used a Gini ratio to calculate levels of income inequality. Then we used Lagrangian interpolation method, which is a common method used to calculate the share of income of top 1%, top 10% of agricultural households, bottom 50%, and middle 40% of the agricultural households. Then we used double log regression model to find out the various factors affecting household income. Then, lastly, we wanted to decompose the levels of income inequality using fields regression-based decomposition method. So these are the methods that we have used. Now, I'll just summarize the results and discussion on four fronts. First, sources and levels of household income, which is common to all of us now. Then levels of income inequality, then elasticity estimates of factors affecting household income, and then sources of income inequality. These are the four heads under which I'll broadly summarize our findings. So when it comes to sources of levels of income, we found that there is a major income sources shift. In 2012-13, cultivation was the primary income source in 13 states. By the way, our study is done on 21 major states and India, of course. So cultivation was the primary source of income in 13 states out of 21 states. In 2018-19, cultivation took a backseat and wages and salary became the major source of income in 15 states out of 21 states. And we found that there is a significant increase in wages and salary in the share of total household income from 2012-13 and 18-19. So between these two periods, wages and salary is coming out as a prominent income source. Income from farming of animals, this source contribution either increased or remained unchanged in 14 states. And these are the states like Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, J&K, Karnataka, Kerala. Like these are the states where this is the share of farming of animals in total income either increased or remained unchanged. There was a decline in non-farm business income in most of the states except Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, and Telangana. So there are around 7 states where this source share did not decrease, but in all other states this decreased. Then the average household income increased across states in both current and constant prices, and then this highest average annual income is found in Punjab, followed by Haryana and J&K, and lowest are the states in West Bengal, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, and J&K. This is the total income of agricultural households. So we can categorize the states where agricultural households income is higher and lower. Now, coming to on the basis of this, from this background, let me take all of you to the levels of income inequality. Now, I would want all of you to look at the All India uh, bars, which is at the extreme right hand side of this graph, where you can see that the first graph is for 2012 bar is for 12 13, and the last one second one is 18, 19. So in this way, we can compare the income inequality for these two rounds. So we can see that although income inequality uh, has decreased, but it has remained at 0.5%. And in case of India, in most of the states, you will find that income inequality among agricultural households, the Gini ratio, is either touching 0.5 or it is going beyond 0.5, which suggests that there is still a higher level of income inequality among agricultural households in India. There are, of course, certain states where income inequality has decreased, but the number of states where income inequality Gini ratio has remained at 0.5, 0.05 or above 0.05 are very high. So, from the overall level of income inequality, let me take all of you to the findings that we found when we compared shares of different hierarchies of agricultural households, right? So there was a significant increase in the income shares of households at the bottom 50% in three states, Kerala, Punjab, and Rajasthan. There was significant increase in the income shares of households at the middle 40% and bottom 50% in Himachal Pradesh, J&K, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu. There was a decrease in the income shares of the bottom 20%, decrease in the income shares of the bottom 20% I'm talking about, which directly impacts the income inequality. And there are many states like Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Gujarat, Himachal, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and West Bengal. There are again, which directly affects the income inequality, is this increase in income shares of top 1% and top 10%, and at the same time, decrease in the shares of those at the bottom 50%. 50%. And these states were Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, and Uttar Pradesh. And decrease in the income shares of middle 40% and increase in the shares of the top 10% and bottom 50%, Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. Right? So there are a significant number of states where we will find, from this slide, we find that there is high level of income inequality. Now, let me quickly give you the factors that we found to affect the household income from the double log regression model. Elasticity coefficients were positive and statistically significant across all states, and those factors were household size,
Dr.
occupation
Amit,
of the head of the households.
Dr.
And
Amit,
yes, sir.
you
Yes, sir.
have 1 more minute.
Okay, I'll just quickly finish, right?
Sorry.
Head of the households engaged in livestock farming, farm size, whether they are aware about MSP, and whether they have 12, 13. The main source was farm size, which was used as a proxy for income cultivation. It contributed around 50%. Other factors were household size, non-farm business as occupation, age, literacy, gender, caste, livestock farming, MSP, technical advice. We found caste to be one of the important factors affecting income inequality in 2012-13. However, this changed. Whereas in 2012-13, farm size contributed more than 50% of total inequality across all states. It was reduced to 40%, but still farm size is the significant factor affecting income inequality. Then household size, wages and salary, livestock farming, non-farm business, then other factors like age, that they still affected the sources of income inequality. On the basis of all these things, we can conclude that there is high income inequality across states. Inequality in land distribution is one of the most important historical factors we found that because we found that farm size affects is the major factor that affects income inequality. So inequality in the land distribution is still persisting, and that affects the income inequality. So based on this, we suggested some policy measures like raising agricultural productivity. Because farm size was important, we suggested to encourage small and marginal farmers to diversify to high value crops and create alternate employment opportunities in non-farm sectors. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Amit, it was a nice presentation, interesting things. So can one take questions in the last part of when it's ending, we'll take questions. You'll be there online?
Yeah, I was just going to the department. I'm still in my home. So I'll take questions if within 15, 20 minutes I can wait.
Yeah. Okay then. The next
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
next speaker is next one now, fourth, no? Dr. Nitin comes. Sequencing has changed. I'm finding the name.
How much time? Okay, I will try. मेरा ही है ना ये आपका चैनल so a little bit good morning everyone, thank you for the opportunity, particularly from the School of Economics and Dr. Sridevi. So today I am presenting on wealth inequality, which I am working on since some few years, and I have worked for Indian Institute of Dalit Studies. One project I did for them on intergroup wealth inequality, but it was till 2013 data. Now the new data has came for 2018 that I have incorporated here. That is the addition, and I have not seen it any publication on that. So that is one thing. So here I will be looking at trends, patterns, and factors that determine the wealth. In the since yesterday we are talking about that there is a gap is bridging in terms of endowment factors, but still there is a gap between the scheduled caste and different other upper caste. So this particular presentation is based on the All India Development Debt and Investment Survey, which was conducted in 1992, 2003, 2013, and recently in 2018. The problem with the data is that it generally, if higher end and lower end households are generally not included because of various reasons. But if there is some inclusion and exclusion is happening, it will impact the result. And therefore, this data has to be little compared between years a little cautiously. So the objective of this presentation is threefold. One is to look at the trends over the last 30 years, then patterns across the social group, across rural, urban, religious groups, and also the tribals. And for that purpose, I made a simple cross tabulation between the social group and religious group and brought out some different kind of identities. So I will directly go to the tables. First is the aggregate tables, where I am showing total assets in India between 1992 to 2018. And you can see that there is an increase in the total wealth, whether it is a rural area, urban area, or total. But if we compare in terms of the per household average value of the assets, there is a decline between 2013 to 2018 in the wealth. And that is because of the upper end households are less included in 2018 as compared to the 2013. And therefore, this decline we can observe. That is one of the reason I identified. Still, I'm working on that. If we see the inequality across the households, we can find that there is an improvement in the wealth ownership among the lowest 50% of the household, although their wealth ownership is very less as compared to their total household share. And there is a decline in the ownership of at the upper household shares, upper quantile groups. If we
I can compare if for top 1%, then in 2003, 17% of the total wealth was owned by them, which increased to 31% in 2013 and then declined to 17%. So the wealth includes different kinds of assets like land, building, livestock, farm equipments, non-farm equipments, transport, shares, deposits, and gold. But the constitute of wealth in terms of land and building is more than 90%. It is little higher in rural area as compared to the urban area, and land is more, the value of land is more in rural area as compared to rural area, but building is much more in urban areas. So the same result which I have shown for total wealth is also observed in terms of the wealth asset ownership and building ownership, which constitutes 90%, and there is a decline in the ownership of wealth of land and building at the higher end. Coming to the intergroup inequality, there are scheduled tribes, scheduled castes, Hindu OBCs, Hindu high caste, and Muslims. So ownership of scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, and Hindu OBCs have increased between 2013 to 2018, but ownership is much less as compared to the Hindu high caste. Same results are there for rural and urban areas, where scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and OBCs have less ownership of wealth, but OBCs have slightly better position, as we can see from the, if we compare the wealth ownership with their share of households, you can see that there is improvement between 2013 to 2018, but this ratio of share of households and the share of wealth is above 1 for high caste, but for other, whether it is a scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and Muslims, they have lesser, almost less than 1 ratio. Same results for rural and urban. Now come to the determinants. I will talk about, this is a linear regression model. 2 models have been used to explain the impact of independent variables on the total asset and the MPC. So what are the factors that determine these 2 variables, dependent variables? So what the results, I will talk about only MPC and asset, rural and social groups, and education, because these are the major factors as I understand. So asset holding is improving by 0.88% as we change the MPC by 1%. And this is very strong result or association between these 2 variables. But if we see the impact of asset holding on MPC, then the impact is less to 0.11%. In rural area, asset holding is 30.5% more as compared to the urban area, but MPC or consumption expenditure is 39.3% less as compared to urban area. Among the scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, Muslims, they have less asset ownership as well as the consumption expenditure as compared to the high caste. And this, there is a hierarchical amount of reduction in the asset ownership as well as the MPC. So highest is among the scheduled tribes, asset ownership is less highly as compared to the high caste, followed by the scheduled caste, and then OBCs, and then the Muslims. Education, similar thing. If the household head of the household is having a higher education, the households with, yeah, I will complete, with low education and medium education have low asset ownership as well as consumption expenditure. So with this, I will stop here. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dr. Prashant. Has he come?
I've made it. Oh, I can operate from here, right? Good morning, everyone. I thought mine would be at the end, and hence there was a bit delay in terms of traffic. Uh, I'll be speaking on caste and wealth inequality, historical roots, and contemporary disparities. This presentation is structured initially will focus on why are we speaking about inequalities and why speaking about inequalities matters, particularly in a country as India. And for that, I will refer to some of the discussions that were initiated by Ambedkar, and followed by which I will I'll look into, I'll present some of the results that were offered by Bharati, Chancellor, and Chancellor Lucas, and Piketty in their study on wealth inequality trends in India, which I mean, of course, has already been presented by many scholars over here. And then I would specifically look into the inequalities that stem in the rural context, particularly in the context of land, where land constitutes out to be land constitute to hold a major share of wealth in the rural context. And then I'll particularly look into a historic context where I'll try and understand, I'll try and explain the process of essentialization of caste, which was articulated through Aloysius, and how particularly the way in which the Varna hierarchy has expanded itself in Indian subcontinent had paved a way of accumulation of land, particularly amongst dominant castes. And then upon, I would present some results from my fieldwork. But again, there's a caveat, which is this work is in progress, particularly the results from field are in progress. Hence, it will not be as elaborate as it could be. Inequality threatens, I'm sorry, there's a problem with the change in font in the newer system. Persistent inequalities lead to conflicts and disrupt civil and economic life. Constitutional democracy requires reduction in inequalities. Precisely for this reason, that the arrival of constitution had arrived from the pre-democratic institutions of anarchy. It arrived in juxtaposition, particularly to these institutions of anarchy, where there were social upheavals in the form of social movements. And particularly, I'll come back to this later. Before coming back, Ambedkar famously says, how long shall we continue to deny equality in our social and economic life? If we continue to deny it for long, we will do so only by putting our political democracy in peril. We must remove this contradiction at the earliest possible moment, or else those who suffer from inequality will blow up the structure of political democracy, which this assembly has laboriously built up. Because by the time when Ambedkar was speaking up, the movements were quite intense. If one looks at how Tebaga was shaping up, how in Telangana the armed struggle was taking up, how in Palghat the struggles were taken up, in Uttarakhand the struggles were intense, and these were all looking at particularly, they were challenging the order of land ownership, the structure of land ownership, the structures of zamindari, and the way in which skewed concentration of land was in existence, right? So, and in that context, what Ambedkar was articulating, though he was a pro-proletariat, he wasn't for a dictatorship by proletariat, because no one knows what would happen after dictatorship for proletariat also emerges, because dictatorship to proletariat can emerge through violent conflict, where there has to be a violent revolution that should take place. Then only one could see the emergence of dictatorship to proletariat. But then after that, what happens is a big question, right? Whether would it bring in democratic norms into its governance, or would it lead to another form of bloodshed, right? If, for example, I'll not go into examples given the time constraint that is there. I'll just straight away go into the current scenario of wealth disparities, where India's top 1% of income and shares are at their historic lows. The top 1% controls 40% of the total wealth in India, after 12.5% in 1980, and top 0.001% owns wealth, nearly 3 times that of the bottom 50%. So this is the result, and this I'll spend less time, because I'm not going to look into the billionaire wealth per se. I'm going to look into the larger trends on wealth. So this is the larger share. So what Bharti et al. Have interestingly done was they have clubbed the data sets from AIDS, and the income and the data from the tax returns, some of the data sets from PLFS, and also of the Forbes billionaire rankings data, and then they have computed this, which is slightly different from what we get from AIDS, where one could see that Avakas, who constitute a share of 27.2% of the population, own about 53.7% of the total wealth. In contrast, the scheduled castes, who constitute about 19.7% of the population, own only 8.4% of the wealth, whereas scheduled tribes own half of, so in proportion to their share of population, they own half of the wealth, right? And these are the results from the All India Debt and Investment Survey and Land and Livestock Holding Survey. Land constitutes a major form of asset with about 69.2% of the total value of assets. Representation index, which is constructed from the data available in Land and Livestock Holdings, reveals that the scheduled castes are underrepresented in the form of ownership of land with an RI of 0.47, whereas other castes are overrepresented with an RI of 1.32. I mean, so representation index implies if it is 1, there is a parity, and it's skewed. The skewedness is self-representative. What was the mandate of the Constitution? The Constitution emphasizes on equality, liberty, and fraternity. The mandate for reducing inequalities was shaped by pre-independent social movements. As I've already told before, these were the Telangana, the Tebaga and Telangana movements, anti-poach struggles in Maharashtra, and the non-Brahmin movements that have happened predominantly in the Madras presidency, other movement in Punjab, and several movements that were there, which were challenging the norms of inequality. And constitutional mandate also had some of the aspirations to address these concerns that were emanating. And they also laid a foundational ground for the constitutional mandate to arrive at. As I was telling about essentialization of caste, I'll just link with the principle of essentialization of caste, where one needs to look at caste as an institution where it encloses the property within itself with the way in which it functions First of all, caste is an enclosed class, and it operates through the principle of endogamy. All right, 2 minutes is left. And the rules of inheritance were in pre-independence context were shaped by the rule of Mitakshara, which implies only if a sacramental marriage happens, that's when the property can be transcended to the next generation. If there's any violation of marriage, then the property cannot be transcended or cannot be inherited by the next generation of intercaste married couple, right? So hence, whatever property that was accumulated in the past tends to retain within the community. There's a very less scope to kind of break those barriers. Caste forms as a function of enclosing the property within the caste. Hence, what we saw as historic forms of accumulation that were very much to do with essentialization of caste in pre-independence context have their continuity in present also, with the way in which endogamy continues to persist. Well, land to the tiller paved was remained out to be a slogan which didn't really make much of a difference in the process of implementation of land reforms. And then we saw the emergence of Green Revolution, which was championed as being scale neutral, but in terms of the implementation of the policy, what one could see was, these are the results from Francine Frankel. What one could see was it had a landlord bias sort of a policy where the large beneficiaries were largely, in Ludhiana, there were those who were owning more than 20 acres of land. In West Godavari, there were those who were owning more than 10 acres of land. In Palghat, there were, there were those who were owning more than 5 acres. And then Tanjore also had the similar sort of a landlord bias. But then what, in fact, Indira Gandhi was also highlighting this. What was the promise that Green Revolution was supposed to bring in? It was supposed to, if it was implemented as a scale neutral policy, then it would have benefited the smallest holder of the land to the largest holder of the land. But in the process of implementation, it didn't affect, the time is over. But then what Indira Gandhi was warning was, if Green Revolution was not, if the warning of the times of Green Revolution was not addressed, then there is a scope that it may not remain green, in the sense that there'll be violent conflicts. In fact, that's when a second wave of land reforms took place. In fact, if Indira Gandhi is referred to in the villages of the country, that's on account of these reforms, small-scale reforms, which have given house plots. But then, just to look at one massacre that happened during the wave of Green Revolution, which is when there was, because of the new technology, there was a surge in labor demand. Yes. All right, so I'll just go back to the field and then I'll conclude, which is, particularly Anderson and Ambedkar interestingly have an interesting way of formulation. Ambedkar talks about this in the context of devaluation. When exports surge up, who gets to profit from this surge in exports in the event of devaluation? It's largely particularly the capitalists, not the working class, that would get benefited. Anderson, on the other hand, when he was speaking about how export of agrarian commodities affect, what he was articulating was it would help the farmers in the short run, but in the long run, it would also result in the spiking up of rent. So this is a study that I've conducted. In that village, if one looks at the RIs, these are shockingly lower. Scheduled castes are barely represented with 0.1, whereas other castes, if you say they own 4 times more than their proportionate share of population. And this also translates in the sense of how particularly they get to access much of the institutional credit support, and then how rents have risen. With this, I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I don't think I would have done justice for what I have presented, but I hope to kind of engage more on this. Thank you.
It's time constraints, so it was interesting, but can't help from my side here. Thank you. Let's go during tea time and lunch. We'll have little more discussions. Right. Next paper is by Jagdish.
This one, huh? Which one? Which one? Yeah. So good morning to all. So at the outset of this program, I thanks Professor Sridevi for this great opportunity. So and also I thanks all my teachers, especially Professor R. Vijay. And then especially thanks to my guru, Professor Nancharya Garu. Without his support, without his help, so I never supposed to be stand before you. So only because of Professor G. Nancharya, I stand before you. So I think today just I'll try to speak on, this is a title which I will be speaking on, changes in the rural labor market and the marginalized groups and the bifurcated state of Andhra Pradesh. It is a purely depends upon periodical labor force survey. Start from 2017 and 18 up to latest one. So with the help of these numbers, I explained how I constructed some work. This is a part of my research work. So this is a skeleton about, a brief skeleton about my presentation. Start from the labor force participations overall, as well as special focus on rural labor force, especially in case of the Andhra Pradesh. The second part, that's about rural labor force activity wise, especially in case of AP. The same lines you'll try to see that in case of labor force participations, sector wise in terms of the the particular state. The final one that's about the determinants of labor force participations. So in the bifurcated state of Andhra Pradesh. Finally, I conclude with I will try to see that this is the main objective of the paper. My paper, the changes in the rural labor force participation in the bifurcated state of Andhra Pradesh. State level as well as national level, start from 2017 to up to latest one. So then in order to identify the determinant, just have taken some variables on the basis of that. So I explore about determinants factors to participate in the labor market. So why did I carried out this work? So there are three important factors which motivated me to carry out this particular work. The first important thing is that's about the state was divided into the two parts, AP as well as Telangana. So the people one who settled in the state of especially in the city like Hyderabad, most of the people, most of the casual labor, one who depends on these in this state for their livelihood, most of them they reverse back to their hometowns, especially the districts like so Vijayawada city, Visakhapatnam as well as Tirupati, most of them they reverse migrate to the respective districts. The second important thing, the second important factor is that the COVID-19 is a responsible factor. Most of the migrant, not only the city like Hyderabad, across the different states or different countries in the world, they reverse back to their hometowns to settle down. And the last important thing is after the government policies, two governments, especially TDP as well as YSR party, they have implemented so many policies and the programs for the development of the scheduled caste as well as scheduled tribes. So where they absorb, so in order to identify this, in order to identify whether absorbs in agrarian sector or industrial sector and whatever the sector where they absorb, in order to identify that, so we started okay about this particular component. This is a methodology which I followed in terms of this particular study. It is a purely depends upon secondary sources. So we will be conducting the micro level investigation in case of Anantapur as well as West Godavari districts. But we are not yet. We will be conducting very soon. So let us see that this is a brief this national level as well as in the state of AP. So these two graphs represents, one is the national level as well as the state of combined divided state of so AP. So let us see that the first graph. So this graph can clearly explains about the distribution of labor force participation in the bifurcated state of Andhra Pradesh as well as at national level. If you look at the trend line, so AP labor force participation is always higher when we compare with the national level. These 6 years or 6 points of the time, always every stage AP dominates in terms of the labor force participations. But you try to look at one more important point I will try to draw from this particular graph is that, so in case of only AP, you try to see that, so the labor force participation seems to be rising trend, during the year 2020 and 21. So then later on is also seems to be a rising trend. So that is what is we have seen with the, with the help of this periodical labor force survey within this 6 points of the time. Then move on, the next important thing is that is about, you see that this is a table, this is a graph, which can be talks about, labor force participation in the bifurcated state, gender-wise. So not only as a whole, gender-wise, you see that, as you know about, rural labor force in case of AP is always higher than the national level. So, but this graph can be clearly explains about the triggering factors for it. So what is the triggering factors that lead to the, so higher rate in case of in the state of AP. So what we found from this particular graph is that the female labor force is very high in case of in the state of, AP as compared with the national level. That's one of the most important factor which force the labor force higher than the national level. Then move on. The next important thing is you try to see that the same thing. Now we'll try to see that among the different social groups. So the same lines, labor force participations among the different social groups like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, OBCs as well as others. So two sides of the dash. If right side you try to see that that's about AP, and the left side rural India, only rural, but not as a whole. It's only the rural. If you see this, and in case of rural Andhra Pradesh, so I think so OBC is always a dominative number so to participate in the labor force participations. Then followed by scheduled caste and others. Then final one is ST categories. So I think so from this particular graph we can make one important insight from this particular point is that in case of scheduled tribes, so the fluctuation seems to be a little bit higher as compared with other segments of the groups. Take for example in case of 2020-21. So the participation of the rural labor force from this particular segment seems to be rising trend. So this is one of the most important break-even point, though it is a COVID-19 time. So where is the peak stage? Then the participation of the rural labor force in case of from this segment is very higher, very higher. So, but whereas in case of the same manner, you try to see that in case of the OBCs. But this particular time, especially peak time, that is about the 2020 and 21, the OBC's labor force seems to be a downward trend. That is what we notice from this particular graph. But if you look at national level, so national level seems to be a continuously same tempo. We can try to identify with the help of these numbers. So what I mean to say that, so when we compare with these two important things, rural AP as well as rural India, so the fluctuation is very high in case of the bifurcated state of AP. So the fluctuation itself, the scheduled caste fluctuations is very high as compared with other segments of the populations. Yeah, please, I will finish. Then move on. The next important thing is labor force participation activity-wise. So self-employed as well as regular employed as well as casual labor. You try to see that in case of the self-employed within this time, within these 6 points of the time, you try to see that so this can be dominated or so highly constituted by the OBCs. So then followed by others, OBCs and others, then SCs and STs. So what I mean to say that in this case, most of these OBCs as well as the others, so they have their own occupation, they stick with that, they continued with their occupations. So but whereas in case of these two important segments, scheduled caste as well as scheduled tribes, that doesn't have any so self-employment opportunities on account of that, most of them, that is what we noted. So we observe that. The same manner you try to see that in case of the regular employed, this seems to be a little bit alter. This is little bit reverse. So what I mean to say that in this case in the regular employed, so what I mean to say that OBC is always a dominative number, then followed by SCs, then other segments of the people. So that is what we need to notice from this particular graph. And this is a casual labor. You try to see that. And in case of the casual labor, OBCs occupies highest number, then followed by SCs, then followed by others and STs. But you try to see that in this particular graph, the something is a differ when we compare to the regular as well as self-employed. What I mean to say that in this particular graph, but the fluctuation is very high in terms of this casual labor participation, especially in case of the scheduled class. So I'll try to conclude. So yeah, last point. This is about we don't have a time on account of that. I will not explain sector-wise. And the final things, just we made some exercise with the help of the statistical tools. So that's the logic model which we applied. So with the selected variables. So what we found is that there is a positive relationship between the labor force participations and the variables which we selected for this particular study. So thank you all for this great opportunity. Thanks to one another.
The next speaker is Srinivas.
Respected Chair, Professor R. Vijay, discussant, rapporteurs, all the participants, good morning to all. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Professor Sridevi and organizing team for giving me this opportunity to share my research findings here. Thank you. During my MPhil study, I conducted a research topic that rural labor market, nature of fragmentation and investigation into the Kondayagaripalli under the supervision of Professor R. Vijay. So we generally discuss a lot of theoretical questions, how to maybe we can identify it in the empirical in the village level. There I can maybe sir give you a good idea that so one very primary research question raised that why do multiple forms of the labor coexisting in the rural labor market? That is a very interesting question. Then we try to answer for that question to understand household resource position, then the labor size. It is a very good observation that lead me further explore the particularly landless labor households, how their occupational transformation. So this is a first step I try to understand. Then my presentation structure is like this: context and objective of the study, then methodology. Then I would like to discuss some occupational transformation, particularly scheduled caste landless agricultural laborers in particular village. Then what are the factors driving this occupational transformation? Then finally, I would like to discuss some concluding remarks. Then context, I will start because caste is not just a division of labor, it's also a division of laborers. This statement given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. We all know our Indian society, it's a Varna system. Varna system is a closely associated by the occupational role and social responsibility. So in that pyramid structure, bottom line there is a Sudras, among that so-called untouchables, the suffering, what kind of maybe their occupations, what works they're doing, how they're transforming over a period. That is a very interesting question I try to understand. So historically, upper caste, they restrict scheduled caste because it's very difficult to access the household resources, precious resources like water, land, and fair wages. So confining them, the caste-based duties and responsibilities. What that caste-based duties, because if you understanding in the village, there is some local terms, nirigatti, thoti, asadi, and Uravala Kapari, because I will try to explain what are the maybe their responsibility. Nirigatti involves the managing, distributing tank water through the irrigated lands for the upper caste. Then the position of the Toti encompasses of the range of responsibilities that including because he is an attender for the elderly households who are the upper caste. Then he is a public agent announcing announcements through using the traditional dub. So he has a lot of responsibilities, cleaning and then disposing the dead animals. So this is the traditional occupations. Similarly, Uravala Kapari is maintaining the upper caste livestock, managing, then take caring the upper caste livestock like cows, buffaloes, how they can because the all these traditional occupations, it's a very rigid and hereditary. They won't give cash payment because they give kind of food rather than the cash payment. This is the background. Then in this backdrop, this study examines the 3 decades of occupational transformation among the scheduled caste landless agricultural laborers in the particularly Kondayagarpalli village. This study also explored the underlying factors driving the occupational transformation. Then methodology we used is purposely select the one village where the considerably scheduled caste population and multi-caste villages like SCS, BC and Muslims also there. This village is predominantly agriculture village. Then we used this structure questionnaire was designed to gathering the comprehensive data, particularly in every decade. We little bit change the questionnaire. Then in 2002, we studied only 50 landless agricultural laborers. So for our sake of analysis, we classified 6 broad occupationals, wage laborers in agriculture, semi-attached labor in agriculture, wage labor, come sharecropping, then regular salary in non-agriculture, self-employed in non-agriculture, migrate out household. If you understand here, say the households, wage laborers in 2002, it's in 21 households that gradually declined to the 5 households by 2023. Similarly, the attached laborers is now disappeared. Then wage labor come sharecropping, this is an increasing every decade. Then all the households shift towards to the non-agricultural occupations. Then if you see this trend, notified trend, it's an agriculture to non-agriculture. So the trend in terms of the individual also they move towards the non-agriculture sector. In age-wise also, if you understand here, in age-wise also, the young laborers, particularly who are between the 15 years and 29 years, they're also drastically moved towards the non-agriculture sector. See here, very interesting, the wage rates are drastically increasing, maybe due to the implementation of the MJNRAJ. So in 2002, it's an 50 rupees age rate for male, 40 rupees for female. It's gone up to the 500 for male in 2023. For female is 400. But even though the laborers are moving out from agriculture, they left agriculture. For here, we try to understand in agriculture, because wage rate, it's not a matter, discrimination matters, because that is the reason the every day they are facing in the village, in the agriculture field, kind of discrimination. So they don't want to face that. That is the reason they move out from agriculture to non-agriculture. So here we can understand the non-agriculture average salary is not much improved or not much increased, even though the laborers, agriculture laborers, are very comfortable to move and looking forward to the non-agriculture. So very briefly, I can explain and conclude what are the maybe factors driving this transformation. One is in a rural labor discrimination. Then there is an improvement in the education levels. Then the semi and skilled laborers also drastically increase. If you compare with 2002 to 2023, it's more than double the skilled laborers are increased. Then youth migration also happen nearby the town or cities. There is nearly 50% youth move in cities and further. Then another maybe driving factor is that gender discrimination. That is a reason lost. Maybe a lot of women may not willing to work in the agricultural occupations. They want move because they face kind of discrimination in outside within the family also. I will tell you one example. In the recently I visited some schools. In the government schools, all the Dalit girls are studying. No upper caste, even in my village also, no upper caste girl studying in the government schools. Then in the scheduled caste, also the boys are going to private schools. So this kind of discrimination is there. Thank you.
Next is Krishna Rao.
This one you can screen off, no? Light. Good morning to all. I feel very happy to present a paper in my own department where I have completed my MPhil and PhD under the guidance of great economist, my mentor, and my guru, Professor G. Nancharegar. Let me start with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's statement in quotes. On 26th of January 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. We must remove these contradictions at the earliest possible moment, or else those who suffer from inequality will blow up the structure of political democracy which this assembly has so laboriously built. Here, he has very clearly mentioned there is a equality, one man, one vote, one value in the political arena, whereas we have the differences and the inequality in the social and economic arena, where it has to be reduced to make our India as a egalitarian society. With this, I am going to present a paper, or I am going to speak on the caste and gender-based discrimination in rural labor market. Particularly, we have selected a village called Jamulpalam from the Prakasam district of the Andhra Pradesh. This village is inhabited with the 900 households, of which 450 are belongs to Kamma caste, 350 belongs to SC Mala caste, and the remaining are the other castes, where these two castes are dominant. Particularly, if you see the land distribution pattern across the nation, or the even particularly in Andhra Pradesh, where the land holdings are skewed, major proportion of the land is in the hands of upper caste. Even yesterday also, there was a presentations on this land distribution pattern. The land distribution is not in the proportion of their share in the total population. Here, peculiar condition has been observed in this village. The all 350 SC caste households are not having any single cent of the land. These total 350 are depend upon the agriculture sector, and the agriculture sector only the source for their income and the livelihood. With this situation, how the labor market, that is a very important one. Even in the labor market, the labor wages are fixed particularly on the basis of demand and supply. But the peculiar situation has been observed in this village that is associated with the social caste particularly. Because in this village, three important crops are grown. The Rabi season is the main source of the income, either for the farmers or the laborers. Total about 13 labor mutas, you can call as a labor teams, form in this village. 9 from the SC caste, remaining 4 are from the non-SC. And this tobacco, Bengal gram, and the plants are the major crops, where this tobacco only the main source of the employment. This wage fixation, particularly the team leaders are given the chance in the participation of the wage fixation, but they are not having the any role. They are passive and simply participate, and they do not have any voice even in the fixation of the labor wages. After completion of the all operations, if you see from the beginning of the plowing to the till harvesting, after completion of the all activities, they conduct a meeting with the all the farmers. The landlords only play the crucial role, and also they are only the decision makers. We have interviewed and also done the focus group discussion. At the time, one of the senior labor, he told these team leaders used to propose increase of the wages, that all on depend upon the grace of the landlords. Even marginal and small farmers also not participating in the decision making, whereas the large farmers only take that decision. We can understand very clearly the discrimination in the labor market, whereas the structure of the organizational structure of the rural labor market. Here, the wages should be fixed on the basis of supply and demand, whereas it has been decided in the particular village on the grace of the landlords. That we have to see very particularly, because of these all 350 households are landless. If they raise their voice, they may not get the employment, and they have to go under the poverty. That's why they are unable to raise their voice. And also sometimes they used to get the advances from these landlords. That is the observation. And coming to the second important one is the wage discrimination as well as the employment opportunity. Here you can see, as we have mentioned, there are total 12 teams, labor teams, where these are all the heterogeneous group. As I told, 9 from this SC and remaining 4 are from the non-SCs. But they never unite. And also, the first priority of the employment is given to these non-SC labor groups. After opportunity given to that particular group, then only these SC households will get the employment. Here, we have to very keenly observe, and also it has to be taken very important where the employment, getting the employment also, it is associated with their social status. And coming to the women, where the labor wages, the discrimination, if you see the data which we have collected from the field level, this tobacco cultivation provides total 99 mandates of employment per acre. Out of the total employment mandates, women labor are employed in 51 mandates, and their counterpart, male labor, are employed in 48 mandates. If you see the share of the female labor is the 51.5%, whereas the male registered 48.49%. In the case of Bengal gram cultivation, provides 45 employment mandates, of which 21 for male, 24 are for the female. And if you see the plants cultivation, provides 42 employment mandates, of which 23 for male and 19 for the female. If you see in these 3 dominant crops, where 2 crop cultivation female dominates, at the same time they are not getting the equal wages along with their counterpart. Just I will take 1 or 2 minutes where on an average, a female labor is getting 66.7% wage of male in tobacco, 75.46% in Bengal gram, and 75.84% in plant cultivation. But some empirical studies have conducted in the labor market. They also concluded that even for the same work, the female were paid lower wages. And very interestingly, in this village, this labor market is organized, but the equal rights have been denied. And also, these SC teams involved in the health hazard activities, particularly in tobacco harvesting, where the other non-SC teams not involved, they involved in the activities up to the plantation. The harvesting of the tobacco is the health hazard activity where they are not using any gloves, and even in the fog in the early morning they have to harvest the tobacco where they are consuming indirectly the nicotine, and it creates a lot of problem for them. You can see one side in the labor market where this particular group has been denied equal employment days on the basis of the social status, the employment is provided. At the same time, the land distribution is skewed. Even in our Andhra Pradesh 2007, they have redistributed the land, but the land has not been percolated down. Still, the land distribution is skewed, and also there is a gap between the non-SC and the SC groups. In this village, there is no land for this group. That's why this land market, labor market situation arises. In this light of the findings, it is suggested that the government should strengthen the existing legislations and implement it effectively to give the equal wages to men and women for same work and same working hours, and enforce the Minimum Wage Act effectively. Further, effective implementation of land reforms and the redistribution of land reforms and redistribution of surplus land to landless laborers. Thereby, they become economically strong and bring the equity in the society. Even yesterday, Professor Nancharya sir was also mentioning mere distribution of the land is not going to empower these groups, where agriculture implements also should be provided, then only their economical status will be improved and we can make egalitarian society as our India. And finally, I thank Dr. Sridevi for giving me this opportunity, and also the chair, Professor Vijay. Thank you, one and all.
There's a small change in the sequencing of papers that was given to me. Professor Sujit Mishra has some other engagement. He wanted to go. So can I request Professor? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Second author is coming.
Good morning to all. We would like to thank Professor Sridevi for giving us the opportunity, Professor Arbija, Satyasai sir, and others. And the title of our presentation is, this is in fact an ongoing project, Women Starters in an Extractive Industry of India, Socio-Economic Discrimination and Violence. So the picture you can see here is known as Mahanadi Coalfield. It is one of the 8 subsidiaries coming under Coal India Limited. And here I would like to take you people to a very interesting board which is there in front of the main gate, and shall bringing smile in every heart. In fact, these are the 5 words on this basis we have started our literature work, and extensively 3 months, 4 months, and we zero down with a basic question. What are the factors that induce a heart to generate smile in the context of extractive industry with a gender's glance? So Uh, this is all about the study. As I told that we have done a primary survey in Mahanadi Coalfield Limited in Odisha for 10 months and visited 9 villages. Initially, we started with 1250 women, but the final data collection we did with 250 women. Apart from that, we have collected data from widows, single women. Then we have taken data from the secondary sources also, National Family Health Survey unit level data. And this is the, I would like to directly start with the field reflection. Before that, let me to tell, in order to collect information from this area, we had a couple of exploratory studies and series of consultation workshop with the NGO practitioners, those who are working in this area, and we have identified different very important issues, and we tested it. And today we are going to present the outcomes emerged from the qualitative one. So this is the brief profile of the respondents, where the coalfield where it is situated is basically a tribal district where more than 51% of the population are tribal. And in our respondent also, you can see that it is ST, then OBC, followed by SC and rest. Larger number of our respondents, they studied till secondary level. But if you see their aspiration level, all of them, they want to send their children for higher education. However, they did not get support for the same at the household level. So we'll discuss this thing at little length. And the income derived from the forest had come down to a nil. And most important one is the domestic violence triggered by the rampant spread of alcoholism in this area. So the first and foremost issues we are going to discuss is in migration and vulnerability. So for this, we interviewed 3 cohort of women. We started with the adolescent school-going girls. We observed that they're going to school in cycle, but while coming from the school after 4 o'clock, there is a curtailment in their movement. If at all they are going with their males like father or brothers. Second set of women were the women, those who are coming for livelihood to a nearby market. They used to come. Now they have diverted their route and they're going 19 kilometers by foot. And third cohort of women, those who practice open defecation. So with discussion with them, we learned that they are facing like a sense of insecurity. And when we interactively learn that it is the truck drivers, then there is a question, who are the truck drivers? So you can see in the left-hand side photograph, there are a number of trucks, and for each trucks, if you take 3 people, like a driver, Kalasi, and the helper, and if there are 1,000 trucks, there will be 3,000 people. And the other side is the village. So these people, they track the movement of these women and hence the vulnerability. So then the question came, who are the truck drivers? Then we learned that in migration from the adjacent states, they're coming for livelihood. And with the expansion of the scale of activities, their number has increased. And now the situation is such, the poor tribal are in minority number and these guys are in majority number. And when there is a question of reporting also, there are so many socioeconomic risks attached to the reporting, and hence these guys are not reporting and hence facing the vulnerability. And then there are 3 very important issues I would like to tell very briefly. Loss of income of the women. These are the categories of women, our respondent. They used to contribute 6 months of the household expenditure by collection of NTFP, leaf-based product, collection of mohua. But now, because of the mining, heavy layer of coal dust you will find, and hence the productivity has reduced to nil, and they are not in a position to contribute any kind of a finance to the household expenditure. And in case of any kind of a financial ask to their male counterpart, so it ends with a quarrel. Many times it is a verbal abuse, then it is a physical abuse. Next is jeopardize household management. In this area, what happened? It is the male, those who go for work, and they go for work for 3 days, they earn 600 rupees. After that, they don't go to the work till they exhaust the money from alcoholism. If there is a discussion to go or why they are not going to the work, or they should go regularly to the work, again that kind of thing ends with a quarrel. And last but very important one is stringent social conditioning system. So during our informal discussion, we ask the women, why you people do not protest a physical abuse? You can stop it. So they were so surprised, and they said, they told us about a caste forum. So in the rural area, each and every caste, they have their own caste forum, and they have their own policy guidelines. So they discuss, they frame the guidelines. So in that area, beating by a husband to a wife is it is permissible, but the reverse cannot be possible. And if that kind of a thing happens, so there are repercussions. Like, first repercussion is the women will face informal divorce. Secondly, the caste forum will decide to torture the women. Otherwise, they will give a solution to the male, asking them to purchase the hair of the women by paying huge sum of money. Additionally, pay some money to perform some kind of a feast, so that these people can be included in the caste. Because if the women protest or show her hand like this, so immediately the caste forum exclude them from the caste, from water, from livelihood. So if you calculate the total sum of money associated with the punishment, it is a huge lot of money. So the women think that my husband from where you will get. So they just take all the violence, and many times there are report of death also. Next is the questions we ask, why institutional interventions made by the state fails to reach these women. So here the question of reporting is important. And we found that there are two categories of reporting from the NFHS recently released data, is institutional reporting and non-institutional reporting. Reporting means help-seeking behavior of the women. So if you see, we have taken the data, and if you see the lower box, you just see only 6% they take the help from the institutional sources, and rest of the people, very less people, they sought help. And among them also, only 6% they go to police. Rest of the people, they are dependent on the non-institutional sources. And non-institutional sources are those sources, they ask for negotiation. Okay, one third, you can adjust. You have to be with them. And where within that adjustment or kind of taking the violence from their male counterparts, many times their like situation is very much kind of a vulnerable. Next question is, why is the health system not helpful to these women? After physical abuse, no, you can see bleeding of this women, swelling and all, but out of, means they cannot go to the hospital or health system, because the police ask a legal kind of a report. In order to obtain the injury report, in order to fulfill the medical legal process, they have to go to the hospital, ask the doctor for an injury report, for which they have to face who, where, when, and how kind of a questions. And each and every 4 words repeatedly we receive from those participants are attached with very much socio-economic risk, like suffocating institution of marriages, very messy legal procedures and all. And moreover, the opportunity cost associated with, means they have to go to the town in order to contact the doctor. Somebody else has to escort. So there is transportation cost, travel cost, and so many things are there. Okay. So third question is, why there is no regulation for the caste samaj? Yes, there is no regulations, because each and every caste samaj is backed with the political parties, and questioning the caste samaj is questioning the political parties. So no women dare to do all those things. These are all another 3 very important issues came out from our survey. Fertilities and young widows. There are villages where you will find 80% of the women are widows, and among those widows, young widows are more, like women of 22 years, 24 years, 25 years. Stigma of infertility, I don't want to go in detail. But last point I would like to say, being the women of a mining area, it is very interesting result we found. If you are a woman from a mining area and getting married to a male from the non-mining area, so if there is a social dispute among the in-laws, so the first question is assassination of her character. You know, you belong to that area and you faced all this kind of, you know, all those kind of sexual harassment. So you are that kind of a woman. Why are you questioning us? So those women told that being women of mining area is a stigma for us. Next is, like, I would like to conclude by saying that the state means from our interaction with different stakeholders. Our quantitative report is coming, means our main report is coming very soon, where we have done a detailed kind of an analysis. So what we found that the state machinery is organized in such a way it divides the entire physical geography into a large number of unequal binary categories like male versus female, landowners versus landless, married daughters versus married son, native versus immigrated, scheduled tribe versus non-scheduled tribe. So here our point, we extracted the gender portion from all the unequal binaries. And when we did a kind of an evaluation out of it, we found that all the women are at the receiving end at the cost of the development of the state. So here I would like to conclude it by saying the last sentence over here. The mining transition, because now the debate is on transition, just transition. So the transition should be in such a way that it should be gender sensitive. Otherwise, we can say mining transition must be examined through a gender glance. Thank you very much.
Professor Sujit. Next is Professor Kannan.
Thank you, Chair, and sincere thanks are due to Professor Sridevi for inviting me to be part of this important event. I also thank Professor Deshpande for constantly inspiring me to think differently and do research differently. So thank you, sir. Given very short time, I will just show the results. If there are some issues to discuss, I'll be happy to take the questions later. A few studies analyzed caste discrimination in agriculture in the domains of participation of the female workers in agricultural activities, access to formal agricultural loans, the diffusion of agricultural technology, and access to public extension services. There is a limited evidence on caste-based discrimination in agricultural output markets in particular. I'm aware of studies done by Barbara Harris White and others using agrarian political economy framework, particularly dealing with the social relations of production and exchange, where the market is considered as extractive mechanism for mobilization and allocation of resources across sectors in the economy. But the set of evidence which we bring here are quite different from the studies available in the public domain. To begin with, it is important to analyze the status of access to the productive resources by different caste groups. For this work, we use the NSS 77th round of situation of agricultural households, the unit level data. And July-December corresponds to Kharif season, and January to June corresponds to Rabi season. And it's quite clear from here, you can observe that the average size of operational holdings of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe farmers is much lower than that of the higher caste farm households, namely the others category. Since the average holding of the operated area is lower, and therefore the share of the land leased in for cultivations by the scheduled caste agricultural households is relatively high. And also there is also significant level of marginalization in terms of the use of irrigation resource by these caste groups. And this is also quite evident from the unequal distribution of the land holds, operational holdings, with respect to the share of their populations. The share of means that scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, the agricultural households populations, in relation to the share of the area operated by these households. For instance, look at the scheduled caste, who accounts for about 16% of the agricultural households, but operate only 10% of the land. Whereas the higher caste accounts for about 24% of the total agricultural households and accounts for about 30% of the operated area. So there is significant inequality in the operational holdings, and much has been said about these aspects since morning. Now coming to the production and marketing of the paddy, which is the focus of the current research, the average yield of paddy is much lower among the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe farmers than that of the agricultural households belonging to the higher caste, the farmers. And if you look at the value of output per acre, which is called as a land productivity, can also consider as a gross income per acre, and is much higher. Again, is much higher for the households belonging to the higher caste than that of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, the farmers. In fact, and if you see, there is an increase in the value of output per acre along the caste categories line. And this is something to do with the resources, that is the irrigations. As you know, the irrigation is a critical input required for increasing agricultural productivity. And there is a direct correspondence between the area irrigated and the gross income earned from per acre of land, which is nothing but the land productivity, which is quite evident from here. And we also did some kind of the cross, the tabulations analysis in bringing into the dimension of the farm size categories across the different caste groups. To look at the last column of this table, and there is a direct relationship between the gross income or the land productivity of paddy and the size of the land holdings, which means that as the land holding size increases, the land productivity increases directly. So there is a positive relationship, and which you can observe with respect to the higher caste, the farmers as well. The average, the income or the gross income or the land productivity for the upper caste farmers, which is nothing but the others, is much higher than that of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe farmers. In fact, if you look at the average number, it is about 1.5 times that upper caste farmers, the land productivity of upper caste farmers is 1.5 times higher than that of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe farmers, right? And the direct relationship or the positive relationship does not hold good for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe farms, and therefore it has implications for the policy interventions and so on. Now moving to the marketing aspects of the sale of the paddy, this is where the discrimination quite it's in a significant way exists in the output market. If you look at the marketed surplus, which is defined here as the quantity sold as a proportion of the quantity produced, is much higher for the upper caste farmers than that of the lower caste farmers and STs. It also indicates that upper caste farmers, basically the others category, have a dominant position in the markets to dictate the prices, and not just the demand and supply that matters, but something more than that. That's what the cost dimensions, right? And which is quite, in fact, reflected in average price received by these cost categories. And you can easily observe that the average cost of the others, which is the socially advantaged caste group, is much higher than that of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, the farmers. I tried to use the three different measures in order to account for the discrimination in price. There exists a price discrimination across caste categories, but the three different measures, like using others as a numerator, and you can see that the average price is much lower, lower than one, which is numerator use. And also deviation from the mean price and the difference from the mean price is quite significant, quite higher, right? Now this also we try to do econometrically to see, does cost influence, does cost matter in agricultural output market, particularly the paddy, right? So we ran a set of models where the dependent variable is a sale value of the output and controlled for a set of variables reflecting the heterogeneity, reflecting the characteristics of the farm households as well as the operated area. And the results are quite significant. That look at the average income, the average value of the paddy received or realized by the scheduled card farmers is about 1,804 rupees, is less than that of the upper caste farmers. And it's quite, in fact, for the scheduled tribe farmers, it is much lower, amounting to about 2,900 rupees as compared to the upper caste farmers. Given the fact that the scheduled caste, the agricultural households lease quite significant amount of land for the cultivation, we try to interact with the social categories, which means, as you can see, it's quite significant. Yeah, just a minute. It's quite significant that the tenant scheduled caste farmers and tenant scheduled tribe farmers receive or realize much lower sale value of the output than that of a upper caste tenant farmers. It's clearly indicate that's the exploitative behavior of the tenancy relations or tenancy arrangement, and also the price that works in the market, right? I'm sure this is open and work is contentious if you can. Then we also try to see this discrimination in the market in another angle in terms of, I'll just take a minute, sir, with the permission. We also try to see the discrimination in agriculture market through another angle, that does caste influence the choice of the trader whom the farmers can dispose their products, where we also bring the source of loan and also the source of the purchase of fertilizers, which means trying to see in terms of the interlocked factor market that affects the sale, the choice of the traders. Now it's quite clear that the scheduled tribe and scheduled caste farmers are more likely to sell their paddy to the local traders and then the marketing channels. And we, again, controlled for many factors. Then we try to interact with the source of loan. Again, a source of loan. It's quite significant for the scheduled tribe farmers, but not for the scheduled caste farmers, but other results remains more or less same. Just to conclude, the farm households belonging to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe farmers have a lower endowment of productive resources, and as we saw, the average yield and land productivity of paddy is much lower for them. And for almost a homogeneous product like a paddy, and this is for, again, since lack of time, we did only the analysis for the Kharif paddy, not for the Rabi, for data problem. For almost a homogeneous product like a paddy, price discrimination exists based on cost identity. The paddy sales realization is significantly lower for tenant SC and ST farmers as compared to the tenant farmers of socially advantaged caste. SC, ST farmers are more likely to sell paddy to local traders than any government agency like APMC, cooperatives, procurement agencies, and therefore they tend to receive a lower price. So thank you. And
thank you, Professor Kannan. The last paper is Professor Prashant. Yeah.
Which this one? The donkey, right? Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Yeah. Yeah, respected chair and discussant and colleagues. First of all, I will thank Dr. Sridevi for inviting me and encouraging me to present in this topic. Just a little outlier. The last presentation, but quite an outlier around. But then I want to put forth a few propositions, which actually are getting suppressed in the narrative. Maybe I'll start with a certain line of thinking, but then as I come to the conclusions, I put forth certain things which we might not notice, but those things are something that should be what you can say, a point of discussion. Maybe if you look at the Indian diaspora as a whole, right, the way it has emerged around, something which you would fit in what Thomas Schelling would talk about as a clustering model. Yes, there is an initial wave of migration. That initial wave of migration creates a certain networks. That networks generate a certain social capital. And as you look at part dependency, you might take a small decision, small individual decision that might be independent. You might have taken that decision independent of any other influences, but then over a period of time, they deviate, they accumulate, they magnify, create a certain pattern which becomes a norm. And then when it achieves a certain threshold, it creates a condition for what we can call a segregation. Yes, there is definitely a homophily. You are more comfortable with your peers. So therefore, naturally, when we go abroad, there's naturally going to be a tendency that you're more comfortable with your peers, and therefore we are likely to settle down there. We are likely to work in organizations. For example, Indians are likely to work in organizations where more Indians are likely to be. There, Indians are likely to study in those universities where there's a possibility or probability of more Indians being there. And therefore, naturally, a kind of an informal segregation which comes around. It's not intentional. It's not necessarily an intentional one, but an unintentional one. But results in a certain sort of a domination, a systemic kind of a domination that emerges out. Now, is this something that is only holds for Indians? May not necessarily be. If you actually look at the US society, different communities have clustered around certain niches. There are some examples which I have given around. Therefore, if you look at it, there is a little bit of overrepresentation of blacks perhaps in NBA or NFL. Maybe if you look at dry cleaning, it's more Korean dominated. Nail salons would be more Vietnamese. Farm workers, Texas, more dominated by Mexicans. So it's an emergence of a cluster, unintended, but certainly a path dependent. But let's look at the little issues around here. Why that hostility emerges? There are two things here. Why the hostility emerges? Number one, does the hostility impact everybody equally? Three, in this hostility, who are likely to be the winners, who are likely to be the losers? Yes, there is a narrative. Maybe it's a group conflict. Yes, jobs are limited. And therefore, everybody trying to compete for that, a zero-sum competition. And somebody has to be scapegoated, somebody has to be blamed there, somebody has to be found a reason. Maybe it was Bangalore. Some 20 years ago, it started with that, all jobs are getting outsourced to Bangalore. So the narrative gets framed, something what fits very well what behavioral economics would talk about. Now, as the narratives flourish, as the narratives go forward, they get a little amplified, they get anchored in that mind. And so therefore, when the argument happens, when the argument begins, that arguments revolve around a narrative which has been fit into it. Okay, there is a certain society, certain group, which we feel is a cultural outsiders, which we feel is represents a certain kind of an identity. But the pattern of the success, the pattern of the achievements is contrary to what we perceive of that, right? So there is a threat emerging in terms of a new dominance, a new social and economic dominance emerging around. And therefore, maybe in the US, again, what Amit Chua would talk about as dominant market minority, Indians are Indians emerging around the latest wave of migrations over the last 25, 30 years, the IT wave of migrations. Are they creating Indians as a sort of a dominant market minority? Something which worked against Indians, let's say in Uganda or Ghana or Fiji, Guyana or Fiji, etc. in the past. Now, we all know identity is a utility function, something which Akerlof and Cranton talked about. So utility derived from an exercise of identity, and therefore naturally any actions or response to this derived from an identity. Now talk about what is an American identity. If you talk about Huntington, for example, when he wrote that book, Who Are We? He talked about American identity as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant identity. So which means there was a certain exclusionary system what was created. And anybody not fitting into that system would not perhaps fit into that identity. And maybe that's the reason why Indians may not fit in. It's not something new, something what Kipling would talk about as white man's burden around 130 and 40 years ago. That might become a sort of a barrier to entry, right? There are certain jobs, certain high-tech jobs, certain high-end jobs, certain privileged jobs. It is essentially a man of white privilege. So therefore, a certain group, which essentially is termed as an outsider, a cultural outsider, doesn't fit into the scheme of things, and you find them succeeding there. See, of course, Indians are not heterogeneous there. I'm coming to that point again. A Punjabi taxi driver in New York fits into that American worldview because he or she is supposed to be in the lower end of the pecking order. And therefore, naturally, yes, he deserves to be that. But somebody who's coming into an IT sector doesn't fit into that narrative, goes against that framing and anchoring that has happened around. And therefore, how does it work out? How does that identity work out? That identity struggle comes around in terms of microaggressions. And H1B as a sort of a structural privilege. But here, I'm trying to skip a couple of things and I'm just trying to go to the point. At one level, it's an intersection of an immigrant identity. There is a stereotype, there is a certain identity which is being created. Identity, Indians being relatively lower in the pecking order as opposed to the perceived upward economic mobility. Two contrasting things. And that is creating a sort of a microaggression towards them. And then, of course, there is a dual identity issue. When I talk about Indians abroad, what are they? An Indian origin citizen of US is an American at heart, or is there a loyalty to India? Is there a dual loyalty? That's the question aside. But what I'm trying to put forth together here is certain points of discussions. When I talk about discrimination, taste-based or statistical, whether it was proponent by Becker, the taste-based or the Arrow statistical discrimination, is it amplified by it? Is it amplified by the IT success? Indian diaspora is not heterogeneous. So therefore, the question arises how this discrimination gets played out. See, what the narrative, again, if I'm talking about the narrative back home today, yes, I'll just take a couple of minutes and just wind up. When you go back to the narrative at home, the narrative of home is centered towards the IT sector. Everybody is talking about that H1B, but H1B, to be honest, may not be a real major factor. If at all we are talking about today in terms of discrimination, who are the ones who are going to be the losers of this entire situation? Who are the ones who are going to be the losers of the entire situation?
We'll have to close it in a, we're crossing our time.
Yes, I'll just finish in 2 minutes. How do we actually handle it? Who are the ones who are the losers? If you don't look at it, the losers are likely to be the ones who are less privileged, the non-H1B, the ones who are basically gone, migrated relatively, what you can say, the informal migrations which have happened out, so therefore my proposition here, the key proposition I am putting to it, is there an identity externality? Is there an identity externality that has been created? a narrative being centered around on certain things, yes, at H1B being succeeded, but reality, the ones who are going to pay the penalty, the ones who are going to pay the cost, are the ones who essentially, the ones who are basically the ones on the lower end of the pecking order, the lower end of the working class spectrum around. The working class, the IT class is one, the working class is another one. The ones who are going to pay are most likely to be the ones who are working at the lower income jobs rather than upper income jobs. So there is an identity externality that is getting created, and this identity externality is something that we need to be debating around. That's my point.
Lost our time, but we need to give some amount of time for our discussion. So I was saying that maybe 10 minutes. Hopefully the timers will not keep the timing for this, right? So we just have 10 minutes. Yeah.
Good morning, all of you. Thank you very much for making me part of this very interesting and great learning session. Chairman Vijay and participants. Really, I'm happy to be with all of you on this very interesting topic. In this section, and we have there are 11 papers, and Dr. Kulkarni's last paper on diaspora Maga, and the previous Sujit Mishra's, and they are not directly related to the theme, but they are very interesting nevertheless. They made. And among other papers we have received, I had a chance of going through only three or so full papers. All others only have got abstracts. So that's why I could not make a detailed study of those papers. So based on this thing, I'll just make my observations, quick observations. The subject of inequality and its interface with poverty is very well known, and this is as old as Adam and Eve. This inequality is there, and the studies of inequalities are as old. And we have gained adequate insights into this aspect also, how the inequality and poverty operate and interact with each other. And at the root of this poverty or inequality in the income distribution or wealth distribution, we say so, is the differential access to resource base to different communities, different regions, different segments of people. And this inequality in access to resources and access to market, both input and output, these are the root of the inequality in outcomes. And inequality outcomes, as we know, again, it results into inequality in wealth distribution and then opportunity. And this whole thing operates in a vicious circle and really very difficult to break. And today's studies also, we have two sets of studies within this thing. One dealing with the distribution of income and wealth. The other set of papers which they deal with the labor markets basically, rather input market, but mostly labor related. Most of the discussion is around social groups and a few about farm sizes also, farm size classes also. This is the and coming for the one paper by Basantre and Malik, income inequality among agriculture households. And this paper, I'm not going to give details of all the papers, but this is, I'm making a point, this is based on the situation assessment survey of NSSO for 2 rounds. And what I find in this paper, interestingly, it says that inequalities have come down over time, and that is a very interesting thing. Though they are still higher, around 0.5, that is the thing, important thing. But I think this paper has some problem in terms of estimates, especially for 77th round. And my estimates and estimates given in the reports and what they have used, I think maybe some definitional change is there. So I think the others have to, when I recorrect and rework out, I think the findings are a bit different in certain aspects. I think this is one caution I would like to highlight. Other than that, the paper is really good and made interesting conclusions. And one of the conclusions that we should encourage the non-farm sector. So when we are talking of income inequalities, non-farm sector plays very important role to even out some of these inequalities. But at the same time, encouraging people to go to shift to non-farm sector, it requires skills, different types of skills, and which is again is another issue. Skills or access to training inputs is not really equally distributed again. And the next paper by Ghanshyam Pandey, I think is very interesting and very detailed. And the prescription the paper gives is a sort of a long-term game. It's not. Polomi Bhattacharya has done a study on Koya. It's really interesting, and the conclusion that sanitation housing conditions should need improvement, I think that is well taken, and I think that takes us a long way. And other papers, especially one paper which I want to highlight is about by Prashant, which has really tracked the historical perspective. I think we need to understand the historical perspective of this inequality and historical as well as sociological perspective. I think that gives us clue how to break this. Otherwise, these inequalities will persist, especially in labor markets, and inequalities persist in income distribution as long as the resource access is unequal. And I think we have to think out of the system and out of to get real solutions for this problem. For example, we often find that small farmers are at disadvantages, but it continues. I think by observing this, I think time and again, I think we are not going to solve the problem. I think the real solution lies in thinking beyond this and then how to address this. And we cannot change the social systems as they are. We cannot change the political discrimination as it exists. But we have to operate within the economic sphere independent of these two is difficult. It's not possible. So our solutions, I think we have to focus more on the solutions, but the solutions will not come from the economic systems. I think solutions have to come from social and political, which is very difficult. So we have to find out a ways out of this. When we say, for example, when we talk of small and marginal farmers and discrimination against them are the low access to resources or markets as even for social groups for that matter. I think this we may find solution in forming maybe cooperatives or farmer producer organizations where we can organize them into finding some solution for the discrimination. So that type of, I think, solutions only will help us to come out of these issues. So there are certain other issues in this area, especially the three papers have focused on labor market discriminations. I think the labor market discriminations also are bound to remain largely unless we create an alternative sources of employment for the people who are suffering. I think non-farm sector is one, but which is not really picking up. But in recent surveys, I think it shows that non-farm sector is really picking up. So that way, I think we had to think for this towards the solutions, because so far we have addressed enough the problem statement, and now I think we had to think of solution. I think maybe I suggest Sridevi we should organize another seminar for solutions out of this. and I will not take much time beyond this. I will pass on whatever I have notes. I have just detailed notes. I think you can share with the others if you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just take 2 more minutes before giving it. The set of papers that I was the chairperson for presented interesting part. What I thought maybe the authors had written in the paper, which was not presented much, is that is there a process that happens between the different points of time? There are point 1, point 2, different points data is being projected, and they're saying that these are the changes that are happening. But what happened due to which a process under which the change has taken place from the first to second, I thought maybe it was written in the paper. Somehow maybe our time restrictions, they were not able to tell. So when it comes to inequality, it has a change in inequality. What happens? Why is it that inequality changes? If also is brought in, then the story becomes a little more interesting. I think it's there in the papers. It was not brought up here, maybe because of time. That was one particular point, because a lot of things, inequality, wealth inequality, at 3 points changing is one part of it. It's a descriptive statistical analysis. But what happened in between due to which that has changed would make it much more interesting is what my thing. I think it should have been there in the paper. Right? Last is in terms of thanks to the he did a very good job. As when I was looking at it, I say with such a variety of topics being presented, it's tough to summarize. But I think he did it. The two participants who took care of the timing, I think special thanks. They kept on raising their hands even when people don't, when speakers don't want to see it. They want to avoid. They'll see everything else but that person. Thanks for that. And thanks Sridevi for coordinating and doing. Thank you.
Now I would like to, Professor Arvijay sir, can you just give the memento to our discussion results? Now I would like to ask Shatasai sir to give a gift to our chair, Arvijay sir. So as we come to the end of the session, I would like to I'll just. Yeah. So as we all come to the end of the session, I would like to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude to all those who have contributed to making this session a success. First and foremost, we extend our deepest thanks to our chair, Professor Arvijay, for leading today's session with such expertise and insights. We are equally grateful to our discussant, Dr. Satyasai J.S. Kovali, for sharing your wealth of knowledge and perspective on this crucial topic. A big thank you to all the paper presenters who have shared their research and findings with us today. We truly appreciate the depth of analysis and thought you have put into your work. Last but certainly not the least, thank you to all the organizing committee, attendees, and Professor Sridevi ma'am to give us this opportunity. Thank you. Now we have 10 minutes break for tea, and after that, please come back to the session.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the second panel discussion today, gender justice, climate resilience, and food and nutrition security. I request Professor Geeta to come on to the dais to chair the panel discussion, and Professor Fanindra, panel discussant, to come on to the dais. Dr. Kavya will formally invite all the panelists as well as introduce them to the audience.
Good afternoon, all. It's my privilege and honor to introduce this incredible line of panelists towards you for the panel discussion, gender justice, climate resilience, and food and nutrition security. It's really fortunate for us to have these speakers who deal with varied topics today. So to chair this session, we have Professor Geeta Vimugandi. She is Dean of School of Medical Sciences, University of Hyderabad. She is a distinguished expert in ocular tumor and stem cell biology. Her work focuses on cancer stem cells, animal models, and human lacrimal gland cultures. She also serves as adjunct professor at University of Rochester. With over 100 international publications, invited talks at reputed institutions like NASA and IAEA, she is an exceptional researcher, and she has contributed immensely to WHO's classification of eye tumors, and she has numerous students, doctoral students under her research guidance. We welcome you, ma'am, to chair the session. The discussant for today is Professor Fanindra Goyari. He requires no further introduction in our School of Economics. Fanindra Goyari is a professor at School of Economics, University of Hyderabad. He has completed his master's from Guwahati University, MPhil from IGDIR Mumbai, PhD in agricultural economics from University of Hyderabad, and also have done postdoctoral research at Texas Christian University in USA. His area of interest include agricultural economics, microeconomics, and econometrics. He has published numerous papers and have guided more than 20 research scholars in PhD as well as in MPhil. We welcome you, sir, for being a discussant for the panel. Next, we have the panelists for the day. It's Dr. Shailendra Kumar. He is the Deputy Global Research Program Director of Enabling Systems of Tram and Cluster, and he's a leading market institutions and policies at ICSAT at Hyderabad. He's a fellow of National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and a member of MIT's Global Food and Climate Systems. He holds a PhD in agricultural economics. His work focuses on climate and nutrition sensitive agriculture systems, policy advocacy, and sustainable food systems. We welcome you, CJ. Dr. Subbarao M. is a scientist F and head of information communication and division at ICMR Hyderabad. With a PhD in communication from University of Hyderabad, he has been an international fellow with institutions in USA, Germany, and Japan. He has over 70 research papers, 13 chapters, edited 3 books in areas like nutrition, communication, and safety. So we request you to be on the dais for paneling this session. Dr. Harini Aturu is a highly regarded psychiatrist with 12 years of experience in psychiatry. She has done MBBS from Kurnool Medical College, Andhra Pradesh, MSc in University of Manchester, UK, and her expertise lies in adult ADHD, substance addiction, dual programs, and challenging behavior in learning disabilities. She has published various journals on topics such as physical health, vitamin deficiency, and she is currently a consultant in Care Hospital, Hyderabad. Ma'am, we welcome you onto the dais. Our next guest, her name resonates with dedication, leadership, and commitment in public sector. We are honored to welcome you. We are honored to welcome Srimati Anita Ramachandran IAS. She is currently Secretary to Government Women and Child Development, Government of Telangana. With over 32 years of service, Srimati Anita Ramachandran has profound commitment to public administration and community development. She has worked in various roles, including SDM in Narayanpet, PD DRD in Mahabubnagar, and Joint Collector in Anandapur. She has also served as Collector in Yadadagiri Bhuvanagiri. Also, she has worked for the empowerment of women, particularly through self-help groups, and has crafted many key policies, including Intra Mahila Shakti document. Ma'am has also been actively involved with transgender clinics and initiatives, including the inclusion of transgender individuals as traffic guards. Ma'am, we invite you to the session. Thank you so much. Now, I hand over to Professor Geeta Vemukandi to chair the session.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be part of some interdisciplinary meetings. And I am sure when I was introduced, you must be wondering, what does a clinician scientist have to do with us? I guess even I had this feeling when Sridevi invites me. But the bottom line of our existence is good health, human interactions and good health. And in that sense, I think we are all bound together and we justify our presence despite our diversity. So we have a very good lineup of speakers, and Sridevi always does a great job in bringing experts together. And since we are already running late and all the speakers have been introduced, and I would request to start with the first, Dr. Shailendra Kumar would start his talk. And then I request all of you to switch off your mobiles and please make notes on what questions you would like to ask, because all of us learn from the question answer sessions. Because of the short, loss of time, we may have the question answer session at the end. So please make a note of the questions. We will definitely have time for that. So over to you, Dr. Shailendra Kumar. Yeah, I think the time given to each speaker is 10 minutes. It's too short. I am sorry about it, but I'm sure brevity is an art and you must have practiced it.
Thank you very much, Chair. And also thanks to the organizers and Dr. Sridevi for inviting me here today, and seeing this such a rich and diverse panel. I think I'm going to learn a lot today. On this topic, it's a very, very important topic. Gender justice, climate resilience, food and nutrition security. And these three are really deeply intertwined. And I would just talk about how they are and how can we really harness the intersectionality of these three. We all know that I think I will not go deep into how if I start from the rich countries, for example, climate change. So rich countries are contributing more to climate change, but the low and middle income countries are suffering more. And same way in the society, the poor people or vulnerable people, less resource people are impacted more by climate change. If you look at these three, the societal goal is really achieving food and nutrition security and inclusive rural livelihood. These two are the ultimate aim when we are talking about these three: gender justice, climate resilience, and food and nutrition security, where gender justice is also at the core here. So when I talk about this intertwinedness, the climate change is impacting agriculture very much. And every year the impact is going more. The 2024 was the warmest year so far. So already we have breached the 1.5 degree, which we wanted to really remain below that. And now because of that, many climate shocks impacting agriculture, but impacting more the people who are more poor, or the women, I would say in this case, when we are saying how these three are impacted. So one is impacting women more or the poor people more, but then the food security is impacted in terms of personal level health, well-being is impacted of these people. At the same time, if you look at in India, everybody calls about feminization of agriculture. So the holding size are so small. Practically, it is impossible for the people to really survive with that small land holding. So it's a natural that people will be looking for other avenues for employment or source of income. So feminization is happening in majority of cases, sometime 80%, but average 50 to 60% women are kind of managing agriculture. But our whole focus of climate resilience interventions, policies, whether it is really focusing on women or not, I believe not. Because I have been working on climate change programs for last 15 years. I also designed India's first mega program called National Initiative on Climate Resilient Agriculture in 100 districts in India, now at 150 districts. So our all policies, our all technologies, women might benefit, but the focus of those is not. So this is another issue. So I would say, but once the gender I said, because feminization, climate resilience, food and nutrition. So women are also responsible for the nutrition, for taking care of the family. So when there is a climate change, they are also disproportionately affected in their ability to really maintain the household's food security and nutrition. Not only that, actually when climate disasters happen, there is another issue of violence against the poor, the women, during the disaster, whether it's a flood, it's a drought, or something else. So there are multiple dimensions where this gender justice is important. But now I will talk about this differently. Now I don't want to present a case in a sympathetic manner towards women. No, I want to turn that other way. I want to say that when women are responsible 50 to 60% or maybe more for agriculture, we cannot achieve our goal of improving agriculture without building capacity and supporting women. If the people who are taking care of agriculture, if our policies and our support programs are not really strengthening their capacity, how can we achieve the outcomes which we are expecting from agriculture? So it is the necessity for achieving the societal goals of food and nutrition security and inclusive livelihood to support the poorer sections. Means I will talk about women here, but also the resource poor farmers other than the women. Women, because women are the major kind of driver in terms of really working on the ground. So whether how much technologies have focused, which helps, still you will go in the fields where hundreds of women are really doing arduous work. But men, you will find very little. Only a lot of machines are there for them, but not for the women. It is not, I really don't want to make this issue as a men and women, but I want to make it an issue of achieving or harnessing the potential of development of agriculture and food security. If we want to achieve, we need to really strengthen and focus, because in next 10 years, we will see that more men will be out of agriculture, because the kind of income and resources people need to maintain the family, because now other than the food, you have a lot of other expenditure that you cannot meet by 0.7 hectare or 0.5 hectare of land. So man anyway has to go out. Women are also going, but in rural areas, again, there is a problem. Women cannot go. In many cases, again, the security issues are there, where they cannot move, and mobility is again constraint. So mobility is also affected because of climate change, especially for those people like women again. So I think when we are working on the climate policies or adaptation programs, we need to really very think these are dimensions in a very nuanced way. Now I come to another part. How we can do it. One is that all those programs when we are making for climate adaptation or for food and nutrition security, just I want to mention two of our publications. One publication last 2 years back, published in Food Policy, where we looked at the longitudinal panel data of monthly consumption expenditure. We looked at how the increase in the female labor force participation in the paid employment or on their own farm significantly positively resulted into increase in the dietary diversity of the household. So this is a evidence from the data using the 900 household data for 7 years monthly consumption expenditure. Said if you kind of support women, then your food security can be taken care of. So time is very little, so I will talk one more point which is very, very important. Actually, that I included my keynote in IJE conference few months back. We have around 10 million women SSGs, women self-help groups in India currently. But I think the power of these SSGs has not been harnessed, even not 10%. They are there, some of them come together and save, and that's it. I think these SSGs can become a powerhouse or engine of really addressing all these three. You empower them. So at the core of addressing all these three in terms of gender justice, empowering rural women is at the core. If you do that, I think we can achieve all the three objectives. So how do you do that? Again, I don't want to just say that you do that. There is one very big opportunity. So currently we have a large number of agri-tech startups. I will take maybe a few seconds. We have large number of agri-tech startups in the country. So these agri-tech startups, for them, doing business with the smallholder farmers is very, very costly, because reaching out to large number of farmers the transaction costs become very high. So these startups, most of them are not really economically viable, but they have really that kind of power and capacity. They can help in transforming the agriculture and rural livelihoods. But if we can really connect the agri-tech startup with the women SSGs, because women SSGs are constant in terms of technology, innovations, and market and scale. But if these come together, say for example 500 SSGs, a program which is supporting, and then one agri-tech startup can really empower all these, and there could be win-win. And that is how we can really achieve these three objectives. Thank you very much.
A fantastic way of linking these, otherwise, which appear so isolated. Thank you very much, Dr. Shailendra. I now invite Dr. Subbarao, and who would be talking on information. So he's from NIN, and I request you to take over.
Thank you to the organizers, especially Professor Sridevi, for engaging with us and for a long time in this in her continuous projects on either MDM or maybe foods in government aided canteens, and then how they are, and food security related issues. It's always a pleasure to come back. I'm from this university, and then it's always good to come back. But yeah, speaking about today's topic, I'll try to bring in the nutrition perspective into this entire discussion. Let's take an overview of the country as it is today. When we talk about the nutrition scenario of the country, we usually are given to understand, or the media, I come from a media background, and media tends to highlight, or the academics tend to highlight what is globally shown as what India is bad about. For instance, when the global hunger index comes, when India is 121, it is a big issue on papers. When it comes down to 105, it is in the 10th page. When it is from 121, it goes up to 122, again it will be a big issue. Whether hunger index itself is a right measure or not is a debate that economists, nutritionists, and policymakers should resolve. I'll not get into that. But the perspective that I'm trying to put forth is, when we talk about India, we talk about the issues of food insecurity and also undernutrition as important aspects. But India, in its transition today, the economic transition which is fueling the nutrition transition, has actually converted the problems, the nutrition problems that India has to handle, into a multi